these intros one day, but for now, we'll continue to be a little bit awkward and strange. Um, for those of you who don't know, this is a weekly stream that I do, where I go over different painting techniques using a variety of different models. I try to make sure that the models are, no, I don't try to make sure. I make sure that the models that are there are ones that you can purchase from the Zulu store. Sorry, there's a very loud person outside. Um, if there are any episodes or painting techniques that you'd like to see, there is a backlog of videos there for your viewing pleasure. Just go to the Zulus Games Facebook, go to the video section, and you'll see a variety of content there. Right now, this show is called the Zulus Painting Show. I just realized, like, today that I should probably go through and work on my naming convention so it's easier to tell what the videos have. But I also work very hard to make sure that the thumbnails have something sort of relevant to them. Speaking of relevant things, we're going to hop over to our other camera to talk a little bit about what we're going to be painting today. Gotta get not ahead of myself when it comes to talking. All right, so as you can see, we've got some fun models here. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be painting this guy here. This is the Wolverine from the BattleTech beginner box. It also is in the Game of Armored Combat. Both of those boxes are in the description if you'd like to get yourself a copy. If you've been thinking about starting into BattleTech, the beginner box is awesome. For only 20 bucks, you can get yourself this beautiful model as well as maps and all the rules you need to kind of get started. Oh, interesting. You can tell the difference in darkness of these two models. Now, what we're going to go ahead and look at a little bit today is we've been going over a lot of sort of very realistic looking paint jobs, trying to make things as sort of convincing as possible to make it look like this miniature is in fact a very large fighting robot. Excuse me. Trying to make it look just, you know, really realistic. Now, what we're going to do today, because I think it'd be a lot of fun, because I like to play around with different techniques, is to try something that's a little bit more stylized. So with this miniature, I've worked very hard to hide all the lines where we're transitioning from one color to the other. So like on his shin there, we're going from a darker color to a lighter color, and all the armor panels actually. I'm really trying to hide that transition, trying to make it look as smooth as possible to go from one color to the next. You know, trying to hide that transition. With this guy, we're going to go with a more of a sort of cel-shaded look, where there's two colors and the lines between those colors are very obvious. Kind of gives it a more sort of cartoony look. It really brings out those details, and I think it's kind of a fun technique to play around with. You can really, from the top, you can really sort of see those lines. Now, it reminds me a lot of kind of comic book art, because a lot of times you'll have, well, certain types of comic book art, you'll have only really two colors to show your different shading. Now, we've got sort of three in here. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see a little better on this guy. So the whole model has been primed with this this dark green primer, and I've mentioned that a couple times, and I brought a can in just to kind of show you. I really should use the other camera since it's bigger. Let me pop back over there for a minute. Hey, so this is your pigmented primer. You'll notice on the top it has that green. So let's see. Yeah, so color primer army green. This isn't the color that I used for this particular model, but it is a primer that comes with the color already in it. So that can sort of take away your first step, and that's what I did with this guy here. I remember correctly because I started this guy far too long ago. This was the Caliban green, or the Dark Angels green, for those of you who remember the old Citadel colors. So I hit him with a layer of that, and you can still see that on his legs it still has that dark green, whereas on his upper torso here, I've put a thin layer of a darker green, a lighter green, sorry, on there, so we can start the process. And much like we did with the rifleman, with that white on white, well, white on light gray. While I am doing what I can to get all the tops of the panels with the lighter green, I am leaving the the sort of the recesses and the gaps in between things. I'm leaving it that dark green. So essentially, it's pre-shading, I guess, is the best to describe it. We'll go over it a little bit more on the arms and legs here, and then we'll sort of dive into it. I also already hit this guy with our blue. I believe the blue was the. I really should also write down what paints you use, otherwise you'll never remember what you're doing. Don't be like me. Be better than me. So the blue was our. Oh goodness, I always hate the names of these. Calidor Sky. Is that blue there, and then we're going to be putting a little bit of that nice powdery blue for those highlight lines. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive right into it. Ooh, what brush do we want to use? So we're going to go ahead and start with our layer green, Warpstone Glow. If you wanted the name of the color in your color name, you're out of luck. You just got to know that this is green. Sorry, I watch. Oh, let's shake this guy. There's a YouTuber I watch a lot who is colorblind. I luckily am not, so I have an easy time telling the difference between the colors. But if for some reason you can't, it might be difficult to tell what in the world color Warpstone Glow is. It's green is the answer. So give a good shake to our paint. Pull some of it out on a brush, because pouring isn't an option. Roll it onto the wet palette, and then we're ready to get started. I think so. We're doing slightly larger panels on this, so I think I'm gonna probably end up going with our regiment brush, I believe. I always forget what this one's actually called. Yes. Regiment. I like this one this one ends up being kind of the workhorse brush for me, just because it can get small enough that I can get those sort of finer details, but at the same time it's also big enough that if I want to cover larger areas, it's not going to take me 13 days to do it. And we do have some sort of larger panels here. Oh, if you'll notice also, I've done some metal on some of the joints just to add some visual interest. And as you can already see, it's a very thin paint. So having that green on the underneath side will really help maintain the color. And I think what I should probably do, I should definitely do, is I should get a model, paint the whole thing in a variety of different colors for the base colors, and then come back and layer it with different colors just to show with the same color. That's very subtle. Let's see if I can. Yeah, we'll just make sure we're close enough that you can see it. So yeah, so paint the model in a variety of different colors, and then layer the whole thing with the same color, so we can kind of see how each of the different areas will look slightly different because of the undercoat. There we go. See, two quick layers, and we're already getting somewhere. I don't know if you can hear in the background. I have the noise cancellation on, so hopefully you won't, but before there was a guy driving by that was quite loud, and I think they may have caught up to him. By that I hear sirens in the background. I'm in a good position. Okay, good. I just got to remember to check my position and to see if you guys can actually see what I'm doing. So yeah. I like doing models that look just as realistic as possible. You know, I've really been enjoying working with learning how to wet blend and playing around with different coloration, that sort of thing. And honestly, the last couple layering videos that I've done have been very educational, even for me, Just slowing down and kind of thinking about what I'm doing has been a lot of fun. But what I like about this sort of thing is a little bit more stylized paint can be kind of fun because, you know, these I mean, they are sort of cartoony in their shape and design in a lot of ways. So kind of embracing that with the paint job and sort of remembering that they're, you know, big sort of fighty robots can be kind of fun. Oh, sorry about that. The fun of the allergies. So, hmm. And this is we're doing just our base layer here, so we can get a good base color. Now this, oh dear, my phone seems to have. I got the video playing on my phone because my other laptop is a ways away, and apparently did not like that. All right, we're back. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, so a similar technique could be achieved by doing a slightly lighter color and then washing the whole model. But what I like about this is it lets me emphasize certain places and draw your eye to specific places. Um, Whereas the wash is much more sort of just all one color all over a thing. So by putting more of these layers onto these panels, I can I can emphasize different places. For instance, I'm going to put two, maybe three light layers on these two hip panels here, but I'm not going to put one on the top. That's mostly because I want the sort of outside to be the thing that you focus on, like those two outside panels of the hips. Whereas, and my light isn't great to show it, but this sort of top part here, I want that to really be emphasized that it's in shadow. It's not something I really want to draw your eye to. I want to draw your eye to the important stuff, which is these big old armor panels. What I might also try to do, if we have time today, is I might try to, because I like doing battle damage on my mechs, but I feel like very sort of realistic looking battle damage on this guy wouldn't look as good. Whereas if I did a more sort of big, sort of exaggerated battle damage, that could be kind of interesting. I seem to have covered up a little bit of my dark stuff. I'll try and leave this seam here in the middle. It's a very small spot. I've been playing around a lot with metal, the old metal BattleTech minis, and things I find very interesting is I find as I'm stripping the old paint off of them, I find new detail on the models that I didn't realize they had because the paint that had been put on them was so thick that it had sort of gummed up the works. Speaking of which, my brush is getting a little gummed up. So the thing, what I'm trying to say is, while painting your models, it's always good to make sure that you're doing nice thin coats. It may take a little longer, but in the end, it will definitely be worth it. You'll get a lot more detail out of them. I mean, and there are loads of things that you can do. If you don't want to spend loads of time on your minis, please don't just slap a thick coat of paint on your guys. Hit them with the zenithal priming, hit them with the contrast paint, and then you're done. So simple. There we go. Let's try to lighten up that green. Gotta make sure we're in a good position. All right, we're good. Because yeah, if you don't want to take the extra time, and I mean, there's a lot of situations where you don't want to. If you got a whole passel of orcs that you're doing for your D&D session, if you've got a bunch of orcs for your Warhammer 40k, you know, you're playing Imperial Guard. There's a lot of situations where you don't really want to just get in there and just really pick out each individual armored panel, and I understand that. All I'm imploring you is please don't cake paint on your model. You know what? I do that sometimes, and I'm sorry. You do what you like with your models. What I'm saying is in the long run, it'll make you happier if your minis don't have goop on them. So I'm going back over some of these top panels. Actually, the back here is a really great example of this. So I can pick out these top panels here, but leave the underneath side kind of nice and dark. And that way your eye is really drawn to that top panel. But at the same time, you still see the green of the undercoat showing through, so you still get the sense of the color. I feel like a lot of what model painting is a lot of sort of illusions and playing with tricks of the eyes. You know, layering in many ways is sort of playing with what your brain expects from colors. You ever look? There's a thing you can find. There's an optical illusion where it's two gray squares, and the squares are the exact same color, but because one is surrounded by a light color and the other is surrounded by a dark color, they look like different colors. That is not an anomaly that is sort of limited to that specific detail. There are a lot of different things that will cause your brain to have sort of expectations for colors, size, that sort of thing. What you're doing as a model painter is you're sort of playing off that in a lot of ways, trying to let the colors and the sort of expectations of the colors be what guides you. Another example that I always enjoy is there is a bunch of circles with sort of triangular shaped cutouts. Black circles on a white background. But because of the way the shapes are cut out of the circles, it looks like what you'd expect to see for the corners of a square or a cube. I gotta get in the right spot. There we go. So when you're looking at it, your brain sort of fills in these white bars between these circles, despite the fact that they're not there and it's on a white background. It's all very similar principles. You might be asking, but Rob, how will I know how these principles work? The answer is you got to play with it, or the good old fashioned don't reinvent the wheel. A lot of the different sort of illusionary techniques that you can do have been done by other artists, and they have been nice enough to disseminate that information onto onto the internet and books and a variety of different medias. Which is to say, painting books, painting tutorial videos, much like this one, very like this one actually, can help you with some of those techniques. And also just, you know, being out in the world and kind of thinking to yourself, like how would I paint this? Like how would I use the colors and illusions to make this be something I'd notice? And remembering the sort of size difference. So if you happen to find yourself in a particularly tall building, parking garage, somewhere where you can see something up close, but then also at a great distance. Cars are great examples of cars are a thing that we see a lot. We interact with them a lot, and we see them at different sort of distances. Try sometime looking at a car from a higher height, from a distance. Think about the colors, specifically just the paint job of the car itself. Don't worry about its glass or its tires or anything like that. Those are other things that you'll get to those later. But just looking at the paint job and sort of how light plays around with it, that can be kind of a good experiment to think about for your models. Because the idea is, this guy, despite the fact that he, in real life is, what, 2 inches tall? In the game, he's meant to be, you know, 30 feet tall, I think, 30 meters tall. I'm always kind of confused about the scale of mechs. And it's always been sort of something that's difficult to do. Like, you get your Pacific Rims and your other videos with big robots. Uh, Kong versus Godzilla. The question is, how big are these things? Yeah, for this stage first, we're just picking out the high spots, the larger high spots. I'm kind of think of this like a almost like a reverse wash. Anything where the wash would be going into dark spots, you just leave those alone, and any place that would maybe not be as dark by the wash, we're gonna do this way. Sorry, I'm laughing to myself because I realized I don't know when I became the sort of painter that would spend the extra time to pick out specific panels. But I think it's just over time I've, especially because these guys are sort of they're not really heroes as much as they're just, each individual mech is very much a, you know, he's got his own personality, he's got his own sort of style. Um, Whereas before, I was painting a lot of armies that had 40 or 50 infantry that all were essentially identical. Whereas I only have two Wolverines. And most of my other mechs, I only have the one of them. Wolverine I have two just because I've gotten it's in both the beginner box and the Game of Armored Combat. But it's a solid mech all around, so I'm not mad to have two of them. Also, for those of you who don't play BattleTech, I'm sure this is very confusing talk. Well, it's not terribly confusing. Um, but yeah, this box here, the Game of Armored Combat, has, sorry, you can, this one, has this guy in it, and then there's a beginner box that also has this mech in it, as well as this guy. And I think that's just kind of a fun thing, is seeing the difference in how you can make the mechs look delightfully different just in their kind of different paint styles. Also, I'm starting to notice the theme. I like green mechs. Who would have thunk? That's another thing. Unless you have a specific color scheme you're going for, if you're going to be spending a lot of time with these guys, make them a color that you like. There are a lot more sort of specific color schemes for these guys, and you know, you might be going for certain looks, but in the case that you find yourself being like, oh, what color do I want to do? What's your favorite color? Do them that color. Oh, there's another example. So on this hit panel, we've got these two upper panels here, and I've put this is probably coat what, two, maybe three. So put those coats on there, but then this leg panel down here, I haven't put anything on, because again, it's that bit of something that's going to be covered that would have shadow on it. So I want to leave that shadow and leave it dark. It's triangles. There's a painter I was watching that when he was talking about for recommendations to make your to make it easier to tell where you should do your colors, because not every not every model is going to have these delightfully sort of easy to see panels. Like if you have your more organic miniatures, like say this guy, he doesn't have like panels of art. Well, I mean, he does have armor panels, but he doesn't have the same sort of things that you can pick out with as much detail. So one of the things that you can do is if you prime your model in a gloss black, you then put them under your light and take a picture of them. Because kind of going back to our white model, and actually the principle in general, you can trick your eyes with color. Whereas if you're just in black and white, then you're just focused on the lightness or darkness of a thing. I think that can be kind of a trap that you can fall into as a newer painter, is you can be like, well, I've got color on everything, isn't that sort of good enough? And technically, yes. And you can be satisfied or not satisfied with your painting as you want. But if you're looking at your models and looking at someone else's models and thinking to yourself, wow, how is theirs different? Like what is the thing that's happening here? And what it probably is that within your colors, you don't have as much value. You know, your light to dark is very sort of flat, and that's not true of most colors. Most colors are going to have light spots and dark spots that will be created by their depth. So if you want to make it look like your thing has a lot of depth to it, then you got to add more value. I think I might wait to do this other leg later, because we're getting a little low on time, and I want to, well, not low on time. We're about halfway through today, so I think I kind of want to get to some of the edge highlights and kind of play around with the color and show you kind of how it can change. Because this, honestly, this has color on it. This even has two colors on it. I mean, sorry, for two values for like the greens here. We've got the sort of darker greens in here. We've got the lighter greens on top. We want to take it just a little farther. We're just going to push that color. And really with this color scheme, you're really pushing that color to its extreme. And you're just really going ham on it. We're gonna get hammy over here. I do like, I love the very sort of intentional, very sort of very nice fades. I've been actually very proud of getting those good solid fades from one color to the other. But there's something very sort of visually appealing about those very stark lines of this painting style. So speaking of which, let's go ahead and dive into it. So we're going to our moot green. This is actually called green. Exciting. Give it a good shake. Also, the reason that it sounds the way it does is because as I'm shaking, I am hitting it against the side of my hand, causing it to become more agitated, hopefully to get it to paint better. You don't have to do that. That's how I paint. Or how I mix. Also, I didn't get a lot of paint. That's okay. Like we're doing small lines, so I don't need a lot. Also, I like the nice, the Army Painter brushes are nice because they have a little bit more, they're a little bit more substance to them. They're not as skinny, but they're not great for getting paint out of the pot. Also, having a dropper makes that easier. So we're going to the character brush because we're wanting to do a little bit finer lines. A little water on it. Oh, and remember, if you want to make sure that your tip stays nice and fine, what I do a lot of times is I'll spin as I pull. So I'm spinning the brush as I pull, and that'll cause the bristles to sort of flatten out. So, oh, I didn't do the gun at all. This arm needs a lot of work too. So this arm and this leg need to be done, but we're gonna first work on this arm. So we're going to start with, we're just putting little lines just on the very edges. Oh, and my brush is already dried out. That is the thing to remember with little brushes like this, is you're going to have less paint in them, which means they're going to dry out faster. Yep, perfect. Yep. Oh, there we go. And again, we got those. Oh, sorry. I'm painting not where I should be, and I need to remember that. So we're grabbing just the very sort of top edges of things, and we're highlighting those with our almost neon green. Sorry. Again, it's every time I work on these highly detailed areas, I become very quiet. So it's what's funny is from my angle, this is very, very bright, very stark differences. But on camera, it's a little harder to see. And I feel like that's actually not. I think that's. I don't know. Having it on camera is a very interesting thing because I feel like it changes sort of how you're looking at the different colors and things. So we've talked about these here panels, so we've gotta really emphasize them. There we go. Nice thin light line right there at the top. But we've got two panels, so we've gotta get that line in there too. There it is. Nice thin lines. Very, very bright, very stark contrast. At the same time, that's what we're going for. You know, we're stylistically we're making choices. Yeah. You can really tell we're getting to the high concentration areas because I am having a real hard time talking. So you'll just get to watch me do the paint. There we go. And for this, I very much am using both of my hands are on the same sort of thing. Got to make sure that I have a good solid base because I need to make nice clean lines. Because unfortunately, fixing this is going to be a pain. Although, let's talk a little bit about fixing. I probably will have to do it eventually, but I'll go ahead and talk about it now. If the line is not as thin as you'd like it, oh, I should highlight that one. What you can always do, and I'm going to do a little bit on this one because I don't. So this line kind of got fatter there at the end. It kind of turned into a wedge shape. I'm not keen on that. So what we're going to do is, and I didn't do that on purpose. That's just my hand is not as steady as I'd like. You come back, so you go back to your original color, that nice sort of darker green. You come back here and you just sort of add it on. There we go. There we go. Now we've cleaned up that line a little bit. Not a lot, but at the same time, when you're dealing with stuff as sort of thin and precise as this, less is more in situations like this. One of the things that I've really enjoyed about some of the different painting styles I've seen is there is a line highlight that I've seen on some of the Tomb Kings models. If you played Warhammer Fantasy, not Warhammer Age of Sigmar, there was an army called Tomb Kings, and they had this look that they would do a lot of times that was like this sort of bluish obsidian. But to achieve that, they would simply paint the model a very dark color, usually like a dark blue, and then put a dark blue wash over it to really darken it up. And then they would come through and make very thin, very light blue lines along certain areas, and the combination of the colors would make it look like it was like an obsidian almost, which is a lot of fun. So this one here is kind of an interesting one. If I were to come down this side here, it would be kind of a strange look. But again, because I'm doing that sort of implied line, I think it works a little better. At least that's what I found. And then if I want to, thin brush but not a lot of paint on it, dries out super fast. So I want to continue the idea that this isn't, so we're just going to continue this line down here. So we've got this upper area. Oh, see, I'm making the fat lines. We'll come back and fix that later, but for now, yeah, that's far too fat. There we go. Going back to the arm. Yeah, I'm doing 2 layers of this. It's very neon green because I do want it to really emphasize. I want that very neon green. Yeah. Now, if we were doing this in a conventional layering technique, the next thing we do is we try to blend that color into the other color. But at the same time, what I like about this style is that it's very stylized. It evokes a very sort of interesting look to it. I've mentioned cell shaded a couple times. Cell shading, I don't know exactly what how it is, but it's a sort of an animation technique where you get these very sort of stark lines, this very sharp contrast. I think now that I'm thinking about it, I think it refers to the sort of painting technique that's used, or the coloring technique that's used in the cells of a comic. So, shake up the blue. We're gonna head to our Lothran blue now, because I want to play around with some of the blues. Because I think that's what's sort of fun about this particular paint job is the blue and the green with that very sort of stark color contrast difference next to each other makes it very, very visually interesting. And it's funny is the Catapult was one of the first BattleTech minis that I painted when I first got my box of A Game of Armored Combat, and I had been painting a lot of Imperial Guard, and I was still kind of learning my techniques. And I was like, I want to do some layering techniques on this guy. Then I did this. I was like, oh man, it's not very. The colors are all very, I didn't blend it very well. And then I worked on some other models. I played around with some other techniques. I got better at painting in general, and I always wanted to come back and fix the lines on this one to make it to fade the lines in a little better. But then the more I looked at it, the more my wife was admittedly, she's like, no, it's fun. It's a different art style. It's a different style to it. And the more I've sort of looked at it, the more I've decided that I like having slightly different styles. This is very difficult. That's okay. We can fix it. That's what's nice. Oh gosh, what am I? Oh, I have a little base here. So I've actually set it down on here, so it's less me trying to hold it up and more it just being held up. Ooh. Hmm. Yep, I'm gonna need to go through and I definitely need to use our other blue to help out with these lines. Oh boy. Oh dear. No, it's okay. We're gonna show how you can flatten up the lines, straighten up the lines using your other color again. Because these ones are way wider than I'd like. Oh yeah, these lines are massive. That's okay. We'll fix them in post. See, learning opportunities. I'm giving myself learning opportunities. Actually, it's one of the things that I really enjoy just about painting, and Ethan's talked about this a little bit, is like every time you paint, you learn something new. That's why I like watching other painting tutorials and painting with other people when it's safe, because you learn new things about how they do things and how they make things work. All right, so my blue stripes here have gotten a little thicker than I want it to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our original blue. Which was hopefully the Calidor Sky. It probably was Calidor Sky. Again, write down your paint. Sorry about that. If you write down what colors you're using for your models, it makes reproducing the paint scheme later so much easier. And even if you think to yourself, I'm just doing this as a one-off, this is a hero character, sometimes things happen and you think to yourself, ooh, you know what would look good for this guy? This technique. And what's nice is I will be able to go back later and rewatch these videos, be like, that is the color that I used. But not all of you will have the luxury of being able to rewatch painting videos. So, all right, let's see if we can clean these lines up. I want the majority of any panel to be the other color. Oh, this brush is too large. Well, let's see what I can do with it. So we've got back here. So for these panels, what I want it to be, oh my goodness, I want it to be straight lines is what I want. I want a third of the panel to be the darker blue. Sorry, 2/3 of the panel to be the darker blue. Only a third of it to be the lighter blue. There we go. Oh, goodness. See, at the same time, though, I feel like it's good for y'all to see this. Because, as it turns out, sometimes painting takes time and patience. Sometimes you have to go back over the same area 3 or 4 times to get to do what you want. See, look at that. That's a lot better. I've got the top third is that light blue, and the bottom third is the darker blue. See, that's exactly what I was looking for. And what's funny is even though the light blue is a lighter color, you can kind of can you see it on that one? Yeah, you can kind of see the light blue through the dark blue, and normally I'd be perfectly fine with that because having those sort of transitions to the colors actually is good. For this case, for this style of paint that I'm doing, I really want to have each color be sort of flat and its own color. Because the point is that this is supposed to look like, like a comic book panel where they've only used like two colors to create that sort of look of contrast. Yeah. We want the lines to be stark. We want the lines to be crisp. We want the colors to be sort of flat and just their own one color. Also, look at that. I don't know if that's the model there or if that was me painting too thickly. I think that might be the model itself. That's the other thing to remember, is if you're doing your paint right and you're doing them nice and thin, it'll really show off the details under the model. Now, in this particular case, what those details are is a bad mold line. So, don't forget to clean your models. Otherwise, you'll end up with things like that. Now, again, when you're playing the game, or most things, your thing is going to be nowhere near this close. So from the distance it is from my face, it looks quite good. And actually, these guys are a great example of playing around. Oh goodness, I am so sorry. Playing around with the color, making it much more sort of obvious, really helps bring out the difference in the color. I have a model, an awesome, that is copper, or is it brass? It's a dark metal, and purple. And as it turns out, when it sits on the tabletop, if the lighting isn't immaculate, it just looks like one big solid color. So what I need to do is go through something like this and get those very sort of sharp highlights of the purple to really help your eye realize, oh, that's supposed to be purple. Alrighty, let's go ahead and I like how that turned out. It's nice, sharp blue lines. And what's fun is you've got the sort of repeated pattern of the vertical lines here, whereas the arm is a little bit more sort of, you've got a lot more lines and angles happening. All right, let's do this top shoulder panel. Play around with that a little bit, and then I kind of want to do some of the center chest, because that's going to be sort of like, that's the main focus of the model is his direct center of his chest. So, all right. So you've got like a 45-degree angle on these shoulder plates. I think I'm just gonna put them along the edge. Oh, gosh, darn it! I've already made a mess. What is this? You know what? Let's see if I can. I'm gonna try and do this the cleaning way. So I got my brush is just with water in it. I try to no. Oh, what happened here? I'm out of control. So brush control is so important. You don't just go slapping paint where you don't want it. See, and now it's going to be. So now I got to get a better coat on the whole thing. Brush control, brush control, brush control. Also, my wet palette's feeling pretty dry. Do I have a cup? How can I get more water into my... Oh, there we go. We're about out of time. It'll be fine. We'll let it get a little dry. You know what? Yeah, no, we gotta... Wow, what's this shoulder doing? What I should do one of these days is take all the the models that I've started on these streams that have not finished. I should finish them firstly, very importantly. Then I should I should bring them to a stream and kind of show you guys what I did to finish them. I think next week I gotta decide if we're doing a monster next week or if we're gonna clean up the hoplite that we were painting last week. I know I've been teasing this monster for a while, and I do really want to come back to it. So I think next week we're probably gonna end up doing the snail, because he's a very interesting model. He's got a lot of interesting stuff in it going on. Finally. Got that solid color again. All right. That was a lot of extra painting that didn't need to happen. Let's try it again. I don't know if this happens to you guys, but sometimes when I've put my brush in the water, there'll be a little water up here. I get the bristles to the level of dryness that I'm looking for, and then as I go forward, the drop of water will bloop into the paint and on my brush, and will change how it changes consistency to one that I don't like. Yeah, I definitely need more water in my dry brush. This is a new dry brush, and I'm still kind of learning how much water it likes to have in it. Let's try this again. Do smooth lines, controlled lines. Oh, there we go. There we go. Much better. The fun of high concentration parts. Commentary becomes a little bit lackluster. Oh, there we go. Nice straight line. It's funny how exciting getting a straight line can be. Ooh, that looks nice. And I think here's what we need to do. Oh, this is going to be a pain. There we go. Yes. Just barely managed to touch that little... I don't know what that's supposed to be exactly. Really make sure I got a nice fine tip. Do just a second quick layer to really make sure it's on there. Now, for these chest panels, we're just about done, but I want to go over these chest panels because, again, like with the knee, if you box it out, I've discovered it doesn't look as nice. It doesn't do what I want it to do. Speaking of which, let's clean up this line. Just another layer. There we go. See, much straighter, cleaner line. Doesn't have that little blip. that comes out of it. But that's not what we're working on. What we're working on is the blue. So I think I like the idea of kind of focusing on that. See, that's what I meant. An extra little bead of water in there. What I kind of want to do is focus everything sort of towards the middle. So for these top ones, oh gosh, these top ones here, we definitely want to hit the top of the panel because, you know, that we can do. Then for this one, I'm going to head down this sort of middle side here. Head down that same side on the other side. Now by doing this, I've essentially made a big sort of triangle pointed towards the front middle of his chest. I'm going to do that same thing here. So I get the top part. Reload the brush. Oh man, making a mess over here. Oh, oh no, that's a real mess. We'll come back to that. Yeah, we're gonna need to clean this up a little bit, but that's okay. That's what's kind of this. I think this shoulder here was a really great example of, you know, if you need to clean up your lines afterwards because they're kind of messy like these ones, you can. And so I think always the thing to remember is just because you've gotten the paint on it, your color that's going to be the sort of your top layer, doesn't mean you can't go back and touch up with the darker colors. In fact, sometimes that's what you kind of need to do. Oops, sorry, I keep bumping the camera. Dang it, I'm gonna have to do the vertical. So what I was noticing is each of these little top parts are good, but it doesn't really emphasize the difference between these vertical panels. So I gotta, if I want to really make it look like these are all separate panels, I need to make sure that there is a vertical portion of them as well. I don't need to go all the way down, but I just need to imply the vertical lines. Oh, that was going to need to get cleaned up. Yeah, there's a lot of messy spots on here, but that's okay. And that's I think the thing to always keep in mind when you're dealing with these sort of very fine, very precise lines, is that you might have to go over it with your different colors a couple times to make sure that you're getting the color you're wanting and on the places that you want it. So with stuff like this, you can really just take this side of your brush and scrape it along, so you can pick up that color without having to really make it a good straight line. Which is always nice when you can do that, but you don't always get that option. So yeah, so this is all of this very similar techniques that we've used so far on other parts. So we've got our dark base layer. We've got the So we've got our dark base layer here. We've got our lighter layering that we've done here that we haven't brought all the way to the edges. Oh, there we go. So we haven't brought our lighter color all the way to the edges. And then for this particular one, we're taking that sort of edge highlighting and we're taking it kind of to its extreme. But in doing so, we're kind of playing around with our expectations for the colors. And I really like on this shoulder, it just looks sort of cartoony, which is sort of fun and is definitely my intention. And that's, I think, the thing to always kind of remember is when you're painting, you're going to be thinking about what look do you want to evoke. Like for this guy, I mean, I have green as my base color, and then my layer color is a tan. But because of that, it kind of changes what that green looks like. And whereas, like with the yellows, I've got a much more sort of clean fade, and it's a yellow on yellow. Yeah. Whereas with these guys, because they have those very stark lines, the very sort of I mean, it's a really bright green on top of a very mid-tone to kind of darker green. It really pops. And that can sometimes be what you're looking for. If you want to have that just like really sort of it's like you can really see the color difference. And then we didn't get a chance to get to it, but the blue and the green are very close to each other on the color wheel. They're both very cool colors, whereas the red is on the opposite side of the color wheel, and is a very warm color. So by putting them next to each other, they're complementary because they're on opposite sides of the wheel, but they're also very different. So it creates that sort of fun visual pop, which is what we'll be doing with the cockpit of this guy. And he's got some other details that I didn't get a chance to get to. And on my other Wolverine, it's white, or no, sorry, it's all silver with all of the vertical stripes are red and sorry, not red, good grief, yellow and black on the vertical stripes. And then I put just a little bit of red on these tubes here on the arms and here on the here on the chest and here in the arms, just to kind of get that little bit of visual pop. Generally, if you can get a third color in there, it's recommended because it adds just a little bit more visual interest to it. But yeah, I'm liking how that's turning out so far. We've managed to make a delightfully sort of cartoony look to that arm. Uses the same layering technique, just we didn't blend, and so and trust me, this coloring scheme can go very pear-shaped. Like there are definitely places on this guy where I'm not as keen on how it turned out, but at the same time also it can be kind of fun. And you can kind of see I kind of did a similar thing with the metals on here, where I did your sort of your normal metal, your darker metal here, but then a very dark wash, and then a very shiny metal on the top of it. And it's fun because it kind of maintains the lines. So this light blue here is then continued on the metal there. So yeah, this has been more stylized layering for you today. And yeah, it's okay to have different colors, and these principles can be used on whatever models you're working on. However, that is all for today. I hope you had a lot of fun watching that. If you're interested in picking yourself up a wet palette or any of the boxes here, there are links to all of those in the description. If you have any specific ideas for what a snail that is covered in foliage should look like, any color choices, that sort of thing, go ahead and comment on this video, and I'll have a gander before the next one. And I just saw this. Hello, Australia. Hello, Australia. I'm sorry that you were getting on just as I'm taking off, but I hope you enjoyed the video. You can watch these at the Zulu's Games Facebook page. We got a bunch of different painting videos on both BattleTech and D&D miniatures. If there's any other miniatures you'd like to see me paint, go ahead and let me know. I was looking for new things to gander at, but until then, stay safe, and I will see you next week.